Today I'll be doing a presentation on technology and leadership of space travel. The Challenger disaster was a NASA shuttle that blew up shortly upon takeoff. The explosion killed everyone on board. Everyone on board included astronauts as well as a couple civilians. Of these civilians was a school teacher who won a lottery to get on there, which inspired many teachers at the time. The explosion was caused by a number of things, including a faulty seal in the fuel tank, as well as the rocket concaving due to the less than ideal weather conditions. President Reagan responded to the incident in a speech that would reach all Americans, as well as citizens and governments of other nations. The shuttle program was put on hold while safety regulations were put in place, and the program wasn't resumed until 1988 with the flight of the Discovery. Advances were made to ensure the incident would never happen again. This includes the weather conditions. So at this time, NASA ignored warnings that said not to launch if the weather was under 53 degrees Fahrenheit. However, they continued to launch at 36 degrees Fahrenheit, which resulted in the rocket cascading. After the disaster, members of NASA no longer debate on whether to launch or not. They simply just wait, and this is why when you're watching launches on TV, there's lots of delays. New advances include more testing of rockets through unmanned launches, as well as computer simulations. With this technology, we can see issues miles before they could ever happen during a launch and reduce the probability of disaster. These new advances have led to new innovations, such as the first of its kind space launch system that will bring humans out of Earth's orbit and make us a multi-planet species. Leadership during the Challenger disaster as compared to other American leaders throughout history. President John F. Kennedy is a very famous president known for his moon speech where he said, "We choose to go to the moon." JFK made this mission to go to the moon a very large part of his presidency, even more so than Reagan. Kennedy placed a seed in American citizens' heart that grew to a deep fascination of space. Another leader that also loves space is our current president, Donald Trump. He made bringing back space exploration a part of his campaign, which won over many Americans. This is primarily due to President Barack Obama cutting funding to the space program, which led many Americans to be furious. And Trump immediately brought back funding, which parallels to Reagan, because he did that also. We can also compare leadership during the Challenger disaster to other leaders from around the world. President Ronald Reagan's devotion and passion for space can be compared to Russian President Mikhail Gorbachev. These two men were leaders of their own nation and had two very different views on space. Reagan loved NASA and supplied it with funds to ensure it was prosperous. However, on the other hand, Gorbachev made a trip and he wanted to personally oversee the closure of the USSR space program. Today we see an example of a possible up-and-coming space program in North Korea under leader Kim Jong-un. Despite the nation's controversial development of nuclear missiles and unfavorable relations with the United States, we can see ourselves in them by looking at the small but aspiring space program. Leader Kim Jong-un, while very different to Reagan, is similar in that they both share a passion for their nation in the quest for space travel. Innovations made after the Challenger disaster. In the years following the Challenger disaster, limits on space exploration have been eradicated with the introduction of the private sector. Companies such as SpaceX and Blue Origin are changing the way Americans do space. Private companies take away the politics of space travel, which allows them to go in any direction they want. SpaceX has invented new innovations that have revolutionized space travel. An example of this is the reusable rocket boosters. These reusable rockets not only cut costs, but are also better for the environment. And this is my reference page.